We're live, it says. It says we're live. We're live, folks, with Dustin Hill.
Hey,
Hooray.
everybody. Hey.
So, in just a moment, folks, I will start the recording for the podcast, but just wanted to make sure. So, if you'd give me, as Patrick would say, a 5x5, that you're getting the audio clear as a bell and it's sounding good, let me know, and that way I can start the recording because I know the audio is bueno, as they would say in Germany. So there's that. Got you live 5x5. All right, here we go. Let's see here. Awkward reach. I gotta listen to stuff first. I always get this screwed up. Nope, not the right one. Luckily, All right, folks, and we're back with another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. This week, I am happy to be joined by Mr. Dustin Hill.
Hey, everybody.
Dustin Hill, who is running for U.S. Congress, and that is out of District 3, and that is, do I have that correct?
That is correct.
District.
Missouri's 3rd Congressional District.
Okay, so, anyway, I see Patrick's in here, Jonathan Ashley's here, Ganai's here, BH is here. And for those of you, as you file in, please make sure that you submit your questions in the live stream, and that way we can ask Dustin all the questions that you come up with, as long as they're radio friendly, of course. And then we'll go from there. So I guess, Dustin, to begin, why don't you give us a little background story on yourself, and we'll just kind of go from there so people know where you're from. Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Montgomery County, Missouri, which thankfully stayed in Missouri's 3rd District this year, despite the redistricting process. My parents were both in the Air Force. I was born at Scott Air Force Base, bought the farm outside Middletown, Missouri in 1985, graduated from Wellsville, Middletown in 1998, did a semester at Mizzou in engineering. Thought I was going to be a naval submarine officer, but enlisted in the Marine Corps after about a semester. September 11th, 2001 was my 21st birthday. I was overseas at my first port of call with my recon unit. We immediately went into the AFPAC theater thereafter, came back, I was a West Coast Marine, went to 1st Force Recon Company, did the invasion of Iraq, got out of the Marine Corps in 2007. Went to work for a little company called Blackwater. You might have heard of it. And then started my own LLCs through the years, doing federal war zone contracting, which eventually I stopped last year. I was out at Kabul, Afghanistan, went through that debacle, got out about a week before that city fell, came back, did another tour in the northern Iraq area, and then came home, and my parents were kind of the mind, you've been doing this for 20-some years. You haven't been blown up. You haven't been shot. Maybe it's time to think about doing something else. And, after the debacle of Afghanistan, which I got to say, I think it showed not only the people that have worked there for 2 decades, but also the American people, that kind of shattered a facade of, what were we really doing over there? What did it really accomplish? Backing up a little bit, though, I got my BBA from Georgia State in business economics in 2015. I actually did a year at the American University in Cairo, Egypt, because I taught myself Arabic while in the military. So studied central banking and finance, in a country convulsing with riots. I got out there 3 weeks before the Arab Spring kicked off. So studying, central banking and finance in a country, with a central government imploding at the time, riots in the street, mass hyperinflation, it was definitely an educational experience, you could say. I was also doing a master's degree in economics in Oslo, Norway. I'd torn a shoulder tendon while overseas, so I had to do something that was a little more, not so adventurous, I guess. So while I was waiting on a high-level government clearance to come through, went and started a graduate level econ program in Oslo, Norway. I recommend it to any listeners out there. If you have kids that are getting ready to go to college and you're thinking about STEM or economics or business, the Scandinavian countries, they're always looking for international students, and they're always willing to pay to bring them over too. So that's kind of my background. Did 2 years, 2018 to 2020 in DC, kind of saw the government beast up close, the Leviathan. I'd kind of been at the forefront of its foreign policy abroad, but living in D.C., being around those people and being around that kind of monstrosity, the people are usually good. They're people like you and me, but the system obviously has some definite needs of improvement. And, getting out of there in 2020 was a good time to get out. Obviously, COVID was in full swing, and I came home and then went back overseas, and now I'm home. And, I was going to buy the hometown bar. I thought about it. In Middletown, Missouri, population 167. And it's a really great guy named Brian Burke beat me to it. So I was like, well, screw it. I'll run for Congress then. So, yeah, that's how we got here.
Can't own a bar. We'll just run for Congress. I'm not making fun of you.
No.
I'm just saying.
It was just one or the other.
It's a funny segue.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't going to buy a bar, but screw it. I'll run for Congress because I'm still going to have to deal with drunks either way.
Well, the thing is, and I tell people this all the time about my experience and about the 2 decades that got me here, is this is a lot about giving Missouri a return on its investment, because Missouri and America have paid all my salary for 20 years. They paid for my training. They paid for my weapons. They paid for my operations. They paid for my schooling. All that schooling came from MGI Bill, or either from my salary, which was all taxpayer based. Apart from the side jobs that I do, security consulting or training firearms courses, something like that. The American people have been very good to me, and they've given me the privilege of an excellent education. And also, I'm probably the luckiest Marine you're ever going to meet, because I've survived a lot of firefights. I haven't been blown up. There are men that would be great congressmen, probably better congressmen than I. But, when you get blown up, like one of my friends 6 different times, it rocks you. And that's part of the reason why this campaign is about giving back. I'm finally home, and it's time to kind of give that knowledge and that experience back. And I think the best place to do that, obviously, not that I want to go back to D.C. and live there, but the best place to do that, given my experience, is at the federal level.
Yeah, because we've got Patrick's asking, can we even make a difference in D.C. anymore, or are the statists and the rhinos too entrenched? Which is a question. Patrick and his group asks a lot. I ask the same thing. Is it feasible to expect to go to D.C. and even have a chance in repairing the situation and maybe getting it at least going back the other direction, going towards the standpoint of how do we do things with more freedom instead of less? It's a good question, because we see what's happened just in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the blame game. Well, it's not our fault that inflation's this bad. It's Putin's fault, and it's
Yeah.
the Putin price hike, and the gas companies are just greedy, and that's why prices are so high. Why don't they just drill more oil? The stupid that comes out of their mouths all the time. It's like, can we repair the damage? I mean, it's one thing to stop the bleeding a little bit, but can we repair the damage that they've just run roughshod over everyone, just about?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this year, and the reason that I decided to run this year, was obviously I was in Kabul, Afghanistan last year, and saw that break apart. And then this year you see them starting up the Ukraine thing. And this is probably one of the big policy differences I have between myself and the incumbent, is he voted for that $40 billion. And a big part of my campaign is letting the voters of Missouri, who often don't get to peek behind this curtain, kind of finding that signal through the noise and showing them, yes, this is how the cheddar at the federal level is made. My heart goes out to state and local officials a lot. And I even told some of them that this afternoon in St. Charles, I was at the Pachyderm Club, because state and local officials are trying to hold this thing together, but it's kind of hard when your currency is losing 1/5 of its value every year. I mean, I think a lot of them would just, if we could just get a steady tax base, or if we weren't losing so much. And, it's hard to come home and take over the family farm when you're losing 20% of your value, your currency's value every year. All of a sudden, all the money that you were saving up for this eventuality to come home and take a break, yeah, all of a sudden it's being leached away, that value. My hometown, Middletown, Missouri, beautiful. 300 people growing up in it. I grew up a mile outside of the town on a farm. Now we're down to 167, and people are starting to realize, and this is due to media just like this show, media all over Missouri's 3rd district. People are starting to realize, listen, there's something going on here, all right? It's insidious, it's invisible, and we have to start making moves against it. And I tell people all the time, one of my 5 main rocks that we're building this campaign on is, in times of strife, leaders will emerge. Okay, leaders are going to come out of the woodwork, and they're going to say, listen, enough is enough, we can take this on. It's just getting people to realize we have to take somewhat of a chance, if you want to call it that, to get these people into the spaces where they can be most effective. What we're doing right here, this is a job interview, right? This is a job application. Please ask whatever questions you'd like, kick the tires, take me for my paces. At the end of the day, I want you to at least go, you know what, this guy gets it, and I want him to represent me. I think we have a tremendous just tactical advantage this year because, and I hate to say this, because I think we're already in a recession. I think we're already at the start of a hyperinflationary cycle, that people are going to have a lot more incentive to go to the polls, especially in a primary election. Because if we wait until the general, well, then basically a smaller group of people have already told you who you get to pick. This year, especially 2022, is very important because it's this year. If you think things are crazy this year with what they've already thrown out at us, the administration's messaging. I mean, look at it: COVID, guns. You got the Roe v. Wade leak. It's almost a constant circle, or a circus of circles, right? Rotating these issues in and out of our minds, keeping us distracted, keeping us fighting each other. Illegal immigration. I mean, I'm sure you go through the issues on the show every week. And they're important issues. I'm trying to show people that there is a signal running through all this noise, and that signal is that the DC bubble, is using all these issues, and they're keeping them forefront in their minds, so we fight each other, and we don't realize that there's a federal hand in our pocket the entire time.
Okay, fair enough. Because I will tell you, especially with the group, Missouri Freedom Initiative, we do focus on the state level because, and I'm going to bring up a topic here in just a second, but we've kind of given up on DC. Well, we've given up on DC. We just said, you know what? And I used to do a show. It was called The Push for Liberty. Mm-hmm. I would focus on nationwide, worldwide issues. And then I just sat down and thought, screw the feds. Can we fix Missouri? So first question I'd like to ask, and it's been mentioned in the live stream. What are your thoughts on the Second Amendment Preservation Act here in Missouri? What are your thoughts on that?
Real quick, love it. I mean, it is... I read up on it, and there was I was reading one of the opponents to it. One of the quotes was, "Well, this act is just about secession, right?" And I read that, and I was like, "Yes, yeah, exactly. That's what it's about. It's basically saying, if you, as a federal government, are no longer abiding by the Bill of Rights, then what are we doing here? What are we paying taxes for?" If you're really going to water down one of literally the Second Amendment to the Constitution in the Bill of Rights, then why are we in this? So love the Second Amendment Preservation Act, but as this is a job application, and hopefully you guys are seeing that I'm trying to think of a couple issues, down deeper. The only thing that I worry about with the Second Amendment Preservation Act is if I was let's say South American drug running cartel, I think what it would do is it might incentivize those kinds of criminal activities to set up shop here in Missouri to kind of screw with the law enforcement here. So that's kind of and this is always what happens whenever legislation comes in, is we see maybe 2 or 3 cycles or generations down the line, some of these unintended consequences come up. Now, on the federal level, because that's usually what I'm concerned about, what they do with these second and third level consequences is they do a patch, right? And these patches always seem to end up costing us more. So I like the Second Amendment Preservation Act. I think it's essential, and I think Missouri has a chance to really kind of show the way. I'm hoping other states also take up that kind of mantle. But yeah, I'm always on the lookout for some sort of unforeseen consequences.
And that's fair enough. I mean, my problem is right now it's not that direction. My problem is that we have the Police Chiefs Association, we have the Sheriff's Association coming in and just saying this is the most horrific thing you've ever done. We get it into the court and get it gone. And I'm thinking, why would law enforcement, who are supposed to swear an oath to uphold the Constitution, so quick to say, I don't like this. I don't like people. I know what it is. A lot of it is about the money. They're not.
Sure.
They don't get to join forces with the BATFE and maybe the DEA and get that federal money. Well, this state, out of all the states, I think we rank third in the amount of money we get from the feds.
Mm-hmm.
We've gotten enough federal money to screw this state up now. How much more do you actually need? So that's my thought process on it. But it's also troubling that prosecuting attorneys, sheriffs, police chiefs are hollering about this, and I'm like, it's like, I get it. You guys are out there in the forefront and you're fighting, and you're seeing these homicides and you're seeing all these things, but how many law-abiding citizens are actually going out and just finding someone to murder? It's criminals. It's people.
Right.
It doesn't matter what gun law you have. They're going to figure out if someone wants to hurt someone else, they're going to figure out a way to do it.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
why are we so hell-bent on punishing the many because of the few? And that seems to be a central role of government a lot of times, is a few people do it, so we have to punish everybody. We have to create a new law, which makes things more expensive because a few people screwed up.
Right.
Now, all of you are under this blanket, one-size-fits-all approach. Prohibition never works, and one-size-fits-all never works. The only thing it works in is freedom. Freedom's the only one-size-fits-all approach that works. So let me see what else we got. Let's see.
May I really quick, though?
Sure.
So whenever we're looking at legislation, there's kind of a triad there we always kind of have to balance. And the triad traditionally is freedom versus efficiency versus equity, right? So whatever legislation you're trying to push, you've got to kind of balance these three forces. But if you look at that triad, those that always go towards freedom, sadly, don't get to play with the coolest toys in federal government, because if you leave people alone as a capitalist society and to be free to make their own laws at the state level, with the 10th Amendment or not, whatnot, or to the citizens, well, then you can't build a bureaucracy around that. But if you go for efficiency or equity, right, what happens is you have to build now a bureaucracy to enforce your equity or enforce this efficiency or whatnot. So there's always a freedom dividend when you go towards freedom, because by going with freedom, you don't have to build a giant bureaucracy. I'm not a person, and I've been accused of this before, because I know I ride on the federal government pretty hard because I've seen it, so deeply for 23 years. I've been at the forefront of their foreign policy. I've seen how they extract wealth through the contracting scheme. I don't want to strip down the federal government for parts. A lot of the people there, millions of people work for the federal government, and a lot of them are just good people like you and me, and they're caught up in the scheme, whether witting or unwitting. They're kind of pawns in this whole game too. They're the way that money gets extracted out of the American populace. And I hope everyone goes to our website, dustinhill.org, and reads the policy pieces on there. And, I talk about this in all those policy pieces on there about this is what's going on with the Ukraine. You can use war zones to do it. You can use these myriad 3-letter agencies, 4-letter agencies to do it. And they never seem to get rid of them. One of the big ones that I talk about all the time is the Small Business Administration. Because the Small Business Administration was formed in 1953, and it follows the pattern of all these other agencies. You start with a good intention, right? You let it balloon up into a bureaucracy, and usually at the start, it's still kind of fulfilling the good intention, and then eventually it just becomes a tool of the powerful. It becomes a tool of the bureaucracy. It feeds itself. It's almost like a self-flicking ice cream cone, right? The Small Business Administration had all these programs, and COVID ripped the mask off, pun intended, on a lot of these things, because all of a sudden 30% of one program's loans are just fraud, and 50% of the other loans were given to bigger small businesses, right? And instead of shutting it down, instead of going, okay, now we know, we have proof that this agency is riven with corruption, let's get rid of it or rebuild it or whatever. But on its face, what does the federal government have to do with small businesses, which are by definition probably local, right? Unless they're sending stuff all everywhere. Why do we need a giant federal bureaucracy to the tune of billions of dollars a year to deal with small business, right? Small businesses would be better served if their customers and themselves weren't dealing with 20% inflation a year. It's just nobody ever goes in there and says, yeah, we got to stop this. And it's the same thing with the war zones. I give Donald Trump credit. Every time I bring this up about the war zones, he was the first president, I think in like 4, that had not started another armed engagement in another distinct geographic area. The Iranians shot down a drone, right? One of our secret drones. It was all over the news. And guess what? The Pentagon wanted him to retaliate. Let's get this started. And he was like, no, we lost a drone. All right? No, we're not going to start another war over, a piece of hardware. And you know what? He kept that going for 4 years. And then he gets, Biden gets installed. And what do you know? Within a year, we're in another war zone. And we left $80 billion of equipment in the last one, which, of course, you get to pay for. So, it's mind-boggling. And going back to your previous question about can we make a difference, is the federal government lost? I was talking to a group of Marines last month, and I said to them, leaders do not get the privilege of despair. And I hold by that. When the bullets are going and the bombs, and, it's looking kind of crappy in a Baghdad street in September 2007, you don't get to just throw up your hands and go, yep, I guess we're screwed, guys. But I think community is going to come together, especially small towns like mid-Missouri is going to be more important than ever. And, also you see this happening politically as the pressure kind of twists up the political scheme. It's usually kind of a loop. You've got the left, you've got right, you've got authoritarian, you got libertarian. But as this economic pressure kind of twists this scheme around, you're going to see a lot of these people with different political ideologies are actually going to find strange bedfellows. And you're going to see people that can take advantage of that politically to get things done that Americans may not have thought about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
you got to stop me sometime too. I'll just keep going on. I'll just yeah.
I do this. I certain guests come on here, and I had Patrick on. I told him, I was like, we went on for 2+ hours. I mean, it's just Sometimes you get in the flow and you just go. Um,
Well, I do appreciate the longer type interviews because, like I say, I treat these things as job applications, and I hope there's a lot of good questions coming through.
well, okay, here's one. Um, why doesn't the United States ever declare war on nations anymore? Why is it just an executive decision? Why isn't Congress, who has the power to declare war, not the president, why is that not happening anymore? Is it simply because they know the American people are not going to put up with that? They don't. We've had World War II, we've had World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and then you have all these, either proxy wars like we're doing with Yemen, or just and then shipping arms to Ukraine to fight Russia, or you have Iraq, Afghanistan, all these things. What I mean, what do you think? Is it because that it's happened so many times now that people just go, oh, the president's just declared war, and they just shrug, or is it because also there's a lot of people in Congress who have stocks in all the
Right.
different defense contracts, and they're like, we're going to make bank
Right.
off this war, so I'm just going to let the president do it. We won't take the heat,
Right.
but we're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, and that money gets recycled back in through the donor class, right? And this is something that I feel I'd say privileged to see, but having that federal experience in the DC bubble, seeing the Dulles corridor, yeah, you can tell why that we never declare war anymore, because declaring war is it's something that you have to vote on, and it's a congressional power. And look at the Iraq War. I mean, look at the fallback when that didn't go right. And I always talk about George H.W. Bush and Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I was 11 or 12 when that went down in 91, 92. And, they wanted him to keep going. They wanted him to go to Baghdad. But he was the last president we had that was a combat veteran like myself. So he said no. He said, we've done our objective here. Now, we can argue the merits of liberating Kuwait or whatnot, but we've done our objective. We're going home. And this is why you didn't have 20 years of veterans coming home that are now dependent on the VA, strapped for cash as it is, with missing limbs, TBIs. I mean, the horrific nature of current battlefield injuries, especially after repeated deployments. And think about those repeated deployments. Think of how it's stretched and torn the fabric of our culture too. Broken families, divorces. I mean, there's a stereotype in the contracting world. Yeah, we make $1,000 a day, but I've got 2 houses, but I'm divorced. I never see my kids. I've got 3 trucks and whatnot because when I go home, that's what I've got. That kind of declaring war is something we have to get back to, because I think George H.W. Bush and combat veterans understand, especially when you've seen The Dragon, what war is supposed to be. It's supposed to be, and I hate to say this and offend people, but it's supposed to be brutal and violent and done quickly. You go there, you have your objective, you take it out, and then you go home. We won Afghanistan in under a year, I believe, right? We did Iraq in, I believe, 6 weeks. Right? And then, but if we stop it, and this is something, because I always bring it back to finance and economics, if you stop it, well, then the spigot stops, the money spigot stops, right? Once the contractors and the lawyers and everyone else start moving into an area, this is where you get bogged down, and this is where you get the guerrilla style IED warfare, which obviously causes, the massive expense on our federal budget for the VA, because now we have to take care of these people that have been blown up or whatnot. But also, if you just come home, then okay, how do these people get paid? It's a distinctly nasty phenomenon, and I relate it all back to once we went off the gold standard, and once money became endlessly printable, once the Federal Reserve through the federal government, or once the federal government through the Federal Reserve could just borrow money into existence, then the goal of these federal agencies, the goal of these war zones, The goal of all these things became not to solve the problem or win a war. It became to keep the problem going. If you solve the problem, then you can't bill the American people for the solution. I mean, name any federal agency. Like, throw one out. Throw one out, man.
Let's go with the Department of Education.
Oh,
One of our friends.
oh, one of my favorites. Oh, wow. I mean, I can't wait to submit a bill on the floor let's disband this thing. So let's follow the pattern, right? Start with the good intention. Okay, Department of Education, I think, started in the 70s because, hey, let's MGI bill, right? Let's educate these guys that served. There's your good intention, right? Now we let it expand, right? It was good at the start. You know, college was still relatively, it's not something everyone did. You know, it was still kind of exclusive, still taught STEM fields, taught smart things, right? But then all of a sudden the government goes, and this is unconstitutional, by the way. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say the government is allowed to guarantee loans or give out loans, secure loans. All of a sudden we start doing that. Well, now you see the college explode, right? College just becomes a business, right? We're just here to keep the money flowing. And now we're at a point where we've literally or metaphorically enslaved an entire generation in debt. I think the last count was $1.7 trillion. I mean, that is absurd. And now they don't even have the education in the important stuff. We've got all these kind of crazy, underwater basket weaving kind of subjects, right? So we've got this giant federal Leviathan cabinet level Department of Education. Is education better? No. Is it cheaper? No. Right? You've shown Department of Education that you're not doing well in the education department. In fact, you've destroyed it. But now it's even become a tool where, and this is what I talk about at this late stage game of these federal agencies or war zones. Now it's become a sorting mechanism in economics. That's what we call it. So now it's become a way, especially if they get some of that debt forgiveness across the line. Now it's become a way to funnel capital into one side of the ideological divide, right? Now the people, these are people that, hey, you went to college. You should be doing okay. Now we're going to funnel capital to it. The COVID thing, same thing, right? A lot of people left their jobs instead, and I know a lot of them in the contracting field. Hey, you got to get vaccinated or you can't work here anymore. I mean, you look around Afghanistan, you're like, I don't think they've got vaccines out here. I think we're probably okay. Nope. If you don't get this vaccine, you're going home. And guys did. They were like, I'm not doing it. But guess what? So now you've got this sorting mechanism, right, that the government uses to, okay, if you follow our rules, you get money. You get capital. If you don't follow our rules, you're off on your own. And these government agencies, these 150 now, I think at last count it was, of rule-making agencies. I mean, OSHA. Where are we with, what planet am I on? OSHA, you were supposed to make sure floors weren't slippy, right? You were supposed to make sure the ripsaw in the wood shop had proper safety procedures. Now you can literally tell 80 million Americans that they have to get an experimental medical procedure. Sometimes, and let's go back to your first question there, are we too late? Sometimes I think, yeah, maybe it's just going to keep growing and growing. But my job as a federal representative is to at least hold it back and hopefully hold it back long enough where common sense maybe takes hold again. Because we're coming through our cycle. Sir John Glubb wrote a book called The Fate of Empires. Back in the 70s, he was a British officer. I tell everyone to read it because he talks about the 250-year civilizational cycle, and we are definitely at the end of ours. But the thing is, it's more a cycle, and these cycles always start with warriors. It always starts with a warrior class because guess what? That's where you get the base for the explorer class to go out and kind of that effervescence, that expanding energy to go out and take the culture out. And then you go through merchants and then artists and then, and then it cycles again. So maybe I'm just ahead of the curve. I think I might just be one of the first of a wave of veterans, especially after the last 2 decades of these kind of endless wars that have turned into businesses. I might be one of the first of this wave to come home and say, hey, listen, I was at war for 20 years. I'm home now, and my hometown is missing half of its people. The people are working ever harder than they ever have, but DC is getting the gains. Like, somebody has to stop and say, there's a line here that we're not going to cross. And if that line gets crossed, then somebody's going to have to say, we might have to start looking at other options. I don't want to see that. As a man who has collapsed governments before, during armed invasions, as a man who's lived through, Egypt during the Arab Spring, a government collapsing, I do not want to see that. It is horrific. And when people talk about that, I know sometimes people say, oh, just blow it up, get rid of all of them, which might feel good on an emotional level, but when you actually live through something like that or see it, it is not something we want to do. But people that make peaceful revolution impossible make armed revolution inevitable, sadly. So I'm just going to try and do my part to stave that off. And I think we've got enough people now, especially this year, with everything going on, that are waking up to the administration. We're waking up to the situation that we're in, and people are going to take it seriously.
Well, somebody wants to know if you've ever read the book The Fourth Turning.
No, I haven't read that yet, but I've seen a lot of diagrams on it. I think, we're probably on that fourth turning. It's definitely on the read list. I wish I had more time for it right now. I do. But I think it's kind of related to that, and I hope they correct me if I'm wrong. It's kind of related to that civilizational cycle, correct?
I believe, I haven't read it either,
okay,
but I believe that's it. So they also want to know, what are your views on national voter fraud? Or have you looked into the evidence that there has been voter fraud? Because, I'm sorry, one of the things about, the 2020 election.
Sure.
And again, not a big fan of Trump. He did some great things and he did some dumb things. Okay, and I do. It doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. If you do something good, I'm going to give you props. If you do something stupid, I'm going to call you out on it.
Sure.
Listening to a podcast today, and they were talking about this, and they said, yes, the media. It was a constant 24-hour, 7-day-a-week barrage about how they hated Trump. You should hate Trump for this. He's a homophobe. He's a racist. He's a fascist. Blah blah blah.
And if you didn't hate him, you were too. Yeah.
Right. Now, some of that worked, and I think some of it was, yes, there were probably people who didn't vote for him because they were just tired of hearing about it.
Sure.
There were some who voted against him because they absolutely hated him. I cannot see a man with dementia who's on campaign, on a campaign run, talking about his leg hairs and kids getting 81 million votes. I'm sorry, I don't buy it. As again, not a huge Trump fan, definitely not a Biden fan, but I do not see Joe Biden getting 81 million votes in an election.
Yeah, no, don't trust your lying eyes, though, right? That's the messaging. How dare you? Make common sense.
Oh, Jesus.
How dare you be watching what's going on? COVID, obviously, best thing that ever happened to Joe Biden. I'm with you. I'm with you completely, and I know I've lost some friends about that. And I think what it is, it fits into the kind of the COVID narrative where people don't want they don't want to think critically about it because it might spur them into action. Right? It's easier just to say, everything, nothing to see here. But after 2 years now it's 2022, you can see people are like, wow, we got screwed on this one, right? And I have yet to meet a Biden voter who isn't, in the depths of despair at this point. And hopefully that kind of wake-up call is, like I said, that as that tension ratchets up, right? And those things kind of turn, that political loop gets twisted on itself. You're going to see Republicans coming together with libertarians, coming together with a lot of independents, coming together with a lot of Greens, coming together with a lot of, labor people. As this thing twists up, I think people are going to go, okay, yes, we've gone way too far to the left here on all sorts of cultural issues, on all sorts of economic issues. And I want somebody that's going to go in there and give me something new. And a lot of people are asking me about this election. They're saying, hey, come on, you're a dark horse candidate. There's no way you can get this done. You're going up against a 14-year incumbent. And I used to say, well, actually, this is the way it should be done. The way our system was meant to work was somebody would just stand up, hopefully a good leader, stand up and say, I'm running for this spot, and I think I've got the chops to do it. Now what I say is, this is actually the way this has got to happen. I'm running an insurgent campaign here. I know that. For 20 years, the American government taught me how to fight insurgencies, and now I'm running one. Against it. This is the way it's got to happen, because if you run for all these different offices for years, then you kind of get all this political dirt on you, right? Dust, lint. You're not slick. Like, I can come in here with you, Mr. Williams, and we can talk about anything, right? And I don't have to put this through some sort of political filter in my brain where I'm like, well, no, I shouldn't answer it like that because I might lose some votes here. But if I answer this like this, well, I'll gain some here. No, screw that. Let's be authentic, right? This is a job application, and I want voters to say, yeah, this guy, maybe I don't agree with him on this, X or Y, but at least I know he's got the brain power upstairs to work through these issues on my account, on my behalf. And that's what they're trying to hire me for. Or I hope they're hiring me for.
Okay, so I got something here.
Okay.
It's been estimated that over 95% of the legislation in D.C. is in violation of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's I always kind of put it at 85%, but the Constitution enumerates certain powers to the federal government. They're laid out pretty easily. I got them right here, and unless we can get back to those, and it's going to be hard because it's about 85-90% are completely out of the bounds of what the Constitution should be letting the U.S. government do.
Okay.
Does he have a more specific? Does the
no? I think it's just a general, 95%.
Yeah.
And he also asks, can a division in America be healed in a reasonable amount of time when the federal government puts so many resources into constantly dividing the folks of America?
A reasonable amount of time would be the key phrase there. I hate to say it because either we start making these changes now, either we start sending dynamic young leaders into the halls of power to make these changes, or, like I said, it's just going to keep overgrowing, and eventually it's just going to fall over. Sometimes I tell people I think I'm here to save the federal government from itself. Right now, the federal government has a budget of, last year it was $7 trillion. Now, the GDP of the United States is around 22.5, I believe, trillion. So our federal government is literally, a little less than 1/3 the size of our entire national economic production, right? That me and you are running around with a little guy on our back that's 1/3 our size. That's basically what we're trying to do. Now, to me, I think that should be down to about 10%, right? 10%. So that'd be about $2.5 trillion probably. So that's why, going back to the last question, when he said 95% is unconstitutional, yeah, it is. So that's where I'm going to try and get back to. The Constitution, you can kind of see the ethos of it when it's talking about the federal government's enumerated powers. The federal government was supposed to be outward looking, right? It's supposed to defend the integrity of the United States through, I don't know, territorial borders maybe. That'd be a crazy one. You know, defense against foreign invaders, obviously. And then it also had the other enumerated powers of dealing with conflicts between the states. We don't want Arkansas fighting Missouri, you know, or Oklahoma or anything like that. So now you can get a lot of things, and I know the EPA is a big one, right? The EPA. Now, here's the thing. Now, the EPA follows that same pattern of start with good intention and then let it get corrupt or whatnot. But the EPA, you could almost make an argument for it because, listen, what we have here in Missouri is affected upriver by what Montana does, right? And what we do here in Missouri affects downriver in Louisiana, right? But those are very small powers. This kind of thing, I was in Camden County a couple weeks ago talking to people down there, and they're irate about what the EPA thinks it has jurisdiction over their lake, the issues they do. I've got farmers telling me from my hometown, oh yeah, they measure how much runoff of anhydrous or whatnot comes off your crops. You know, it's just, it's overgrown, and it's these tentacles just keep going. And I would love to see just one congressman or one senator get up sometime and say, we got to shut this agency down. This one's gotten out of control. But you know what? It can be done. I mean, they tried to start that disinformation and governance board, right? And enough people were just like, you're out of your minds. I mean, this is Orwellian. And guess what? Now, they didn't shut it down, though. No. They paused it. Yeah.
Big difference.
Right, exactly. But here's the thing. I haven't seen anyone put any... It would take a bill, you know, the size of this piece of paper. Shut this down. But why they don't is because we've reached an inflection point now is... we can't, the federal government can't spend money even fast enough to keep up with itself, right? We've reached an inflection point. We're $30 trillion in debt. And now what they're trying to do is they're trying to debase the currency so quick that that debt becomes near worthless, right? Now, in the meantime, your currency will also become worthless. Your savings will also become worthless. But if, you know, and you see this all through these different stages, all these different civilizations, if it comes between default, restructuring, or hyperinflation, they always go hyperinflation. So, and now, and I was telling some people down in Marys County the other night about this, now we're actually at a point where the common citizen is going to be fighting, in direct competition at least, the federal government for resources, right? So you're going to be trying to get gas, buy gas, but guess what? You're fighting, you're in competition with the federal government for their gas. Right? And the federal government's going to get its gas. Those J35s take a lot, by the way, too. And so they're going to get their gas where the gas is $5 a gallon, $10 a gallon, 15, 20. And guess what? They're going to borrow the money into existence, put it on your credit card, and make you pay it off. That's a classic hyperinflationary cycle. It's scary, but I think, you know, I'm trying to be an optimist because being a pessimist these days is just too easy. It's just too easy to do. And guess what? In the military, they tell you, if you're doing something that's easy, well, you're doing it wrong, or it's not worth anything. So,
yeah. Okay. Let me think. Okay. So here's another one.
right.
Let me Warrior Class 3 here says, does Dustin think the federal government has the authority to make laws about what we can grow in our garden? I would. Do you think they can make laws about what you can grow in your garden?
I don't know.
No.
Is that maybe a reference to like if you were growing weed in your garden?
Okay. And I had to. I don't know if I told you this when we spoke on the phone last Friday. Marijuana legalization is like one of my big things.
Sure.
A lot of people in Patrick's group here, it's kind of a big thing for them that I interviewed someone last week and I asked him about legalizing recreational marijuana, and it was just automatic no, absolutely not. Can't do it. And
I think that was Scott Riddell, right?
Yeah, yeah. He said he'd been a commanding officer. Sure. He saw what it did to his troops, and I'm like, weed? What? And I didn't question it because I'm like, I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to beat the guy up.
Sure.
But a lot of people were like, what's the, what is the deal? but it is, to me, it's big because I have family members with chronic pain issues.
Sure.
Now they can get a medical card, okay, but they have to post a license saying I can grow this many plants. I don't like it. I don't like the fact that, hey, I already pay 100 or 150 for my card after doing a little televisit with a doctor, and they say, yeah, you definitely have all the things you need for, to get medical marijuana. Okay, well, now you got to post this thing, and with licensure, which I hate.
Sure.
Okay, now we've got, some big companies that are the cannabis companies here in Missouri with the the distributors or what, I can never remember the proper name of the thing. Dispensaries. And now they're coming, we had HB 2704 that said we're just going to legalize recreational marijuana, and then we're going to take everybody in jail who is a non-violent offender, and we're going to just release them and expunge their records. And somebody came up and said, they really should have to have a license to grow their own stuff, and they should only be allowed to have so many plants. And it's like, that to me, that's not freedom. That's not freedom to do that. If you have to ask, okay, if they say we're not going to consider it a drug anymore, we're not gonna have it on the it's not going to be a scheduled drug, but you still have to have a license. You can still only grow so many plants. I hate it. I think it's insulting because it's like, well, you can be kind of free with it, but we're still going to keep you in check. I'd assume now. But again, the caveat, it doesn't matter if it's marijuana, which, hasn't killed anybody, or let's say the state said, you know what, screw it, we're just going to legalize everything.
Right.
I don't have a problem with it as long as the state of Missouri doesn't also turn around and say, whoa, but we're also going to create this program to help people who have problems with drugs.
Right.
If you're going to legalize it, you have to take away the government's ability to say, well, we're going to create these rehab centers because people feel they have that cushion. No, if you decide, which most people don't decide, they want to use heroin, they have to understand that there's probably going to be a consequence for that decision.
Sure.
And it's not, well, I can just go get a state bed in a rehab center if I make stupid mistakes. Now, I'm not saying that churches and other nonprofits can't come in, create rehab centers. I'd rather see the private sector do that. I think that's, I think it's an important distinction that people have to get into their heads, is like, if we legalize things, the people who don't want it have to realize that there's not going to be a government program there to cushion the fall. And B, that if you choose to do these things, you have to accept the consequences of your action, which right now is hard for people to do. It's hard for them to say, I screwed up and now I have to bail myself out, and not have somebody go, well, there's a government program for that. Just go down and get your hand out.
Right, because Big Daddy government wants you dependent on that.
Right.
And that is one of the big things about, that freedom dividend I talk about when you're looking at government programs and legislation, how to set them up, is rights have responsibilities with them. Second Amendment, right to bear arms, which I feel is absolute. All right. Well, if you are going to, carry a firearm, you have a responsibility, and I know this very well because I was in the profession of arms for over 2 decades, and signed away my life many times on, lethal force, use of force, directives, everything else. You have a responsibility to know how to use that firearm well, know when to use it, know when not to use it. And that is the mark of a true professional in the profession of arms, is the judgment to know when not to employ your weapon. But I also tell people, and I tell people when I teach firearms, you see, especially in high relief right now from the Uvalde, Texas, the dire consequences of the judgment not to use weapons, right? Not to employ your rights when it's time. So to go back to the drugs deal, like, close your eyes, John. Close your eyes right now. Imagine right now, all drugs are legal. Now, are you just going to run out? Is everyone just going to run out and buy some smack on the street? Of course not. The DEA is one of these 3-letter agencies that bills the American people for sort of the problem it creates. Okay, now I'm not saying we should just let our streets run rampant with every known chemical known to man, but the amount of people that have been hurt by marijuana laws and then fed into the prison system, these are the things that I think now people are starting to see. Hey, I think this war on drugs, I think we lost it. It's not going well. I think this war on terror, we spent a lot of money and we lost a lot of good people, right? Same with the war on drugs. But these war on these abstract things seem to be the war on poverty, right? These abstract wars we have seem to be covers for more government overreach, more grift. They seem to be covers for an endless money stream to the DC bubble. I mean, now we've got these agencies like the DEA, and same thing, full of good people, full of guys that used to serve in the military and, have seen, their streets become clogged up with whatnot. But guess what? It's become, at this point, a paramilitary intel organization. Yeah, please.
Okay, I've got to cut for one radio show. So thanks to those of you out in KEYK land for joining me for another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. Be sure to check back next week. And as always, you can find me on Facebook, find the live stream on YouTube, or you can email me at mlreport@protonmail.com. That's mlreport@protonmail.com. And we'll talk to you all again next week. All right, and if you want to continue on, I want to add something that's completely off topic, because I know people hear Proton Mail. Why are you using Proton Mail?
Proton Mail's the best.
Proton Mail is highly encrypted. In fact, they sent out emails when this whole Russia-Ukraine thing kind of got going, and they said, listen, we do have customers in Russia. We are getting people saying you should cut them off, and they say, although we don't agree with what Russia's doing, we don't think it's right for us to cut off these Russian people's email accounts, so they are going to continue to be able to use our email service. If you're looking for a different kind of email service, I'm not getting paid. This is not a promotion. I'm just telling you, I use it all the time. Proton Mail is awesome because here's the thing. I forgot I had Firefox automate a password for me, and when I got a newer Mac, I didn't somehow transfer the passwords from my old computer to my new computer. And it's so encrypted and so secure that if you forget your password and, like, let's say you make another password and you reinstall it, you are not allowed to see your old emails. They're done. If you click on one, it looks like code written on a page. It won't even allow you to see your old stuff if you can't remember your password. So if you're looking for a more secure email service, they have an app for your phone. You can go online. Just look up protonmail.com. I'm telling you, they are primo stuff. But anyway, if you want to continue on with what you were talking about.
Well, the DEA, I'm a big, I think it just comes from military background. Military people, law enforcement are, especially when you're in that kind of serious environment, you're very results oriented, and it doesn't have to be a military or law enforcement background. Most people are results oriented. You can't be a plumber for very long if you're not very results oriented. And if you're doing something that isn't working, usually the thing to do is stop it. But like I always say, once the money becomes endlessly printable and fake, then the job isn't to fix the problem, it's to keep it going and then bill people for it. And that's why I used to say government grows, period. It grows when the economy's doing well. It grows when the economy's doing bad. It just grows. But you know what? I think we're reaching an inflection point. The American people are going to be so ticked off. And this is back to your previous point. And that's why getting this election integrity solid. And I think Missouri's legislator, I haven't read their entire bill on Missouri's election integrity yet, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
Okay, so let's see what else. Okay, here's another one. Here's a good one. What should be done in D.C. to deal with corruption? Should we have tribunals for politicians?
um, yeah, they're called courts, and of course they're corrupt. I would like to go another way with it because obviously uh, some of the worst criminals in the world are in D.C. and they're never going to get tried for anything. What I'd like to do, let's take it back to the SBA, right? Okay, obviously this agency's riven with corruption. Shut it down. Break these toys. Because if these toys didn't exist, right, then you wouldn't have these avenues of grift to be used by these powerful people. Let's get out of at least half of these foreign engagements that we're currently in. They're not working for us. These political and military misadventures around the world, right, are symptoms of a decaying empire. And we're now spreading ourselves so thin that we're running out of missiles. Somebody told me the other day that, oh yeah, we're running out of NLAWs to send to the Ukraine. And I'm just sitting there and you can literally hear the DC bubble just kind of like, oh yeah, man, well, I can't wait till we get more in so we can raise the price on them. What do you know? We're out of supply. Get rid of some of these. We need, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it in 2, 4, whatever years. But at least, and this is why I think the veteran background is so important, because it tells people I at least have a spine. At least I have this thought, and I hope people go to dustinhill.org and read my policy pieces on there, that a trip to D.C., it should be more akin to a tour of duty than a career. You see a lot of people when they get to D.C. as a congressman or woman, they get there, and it's probably the pinnacle of their existence. They're like, wow, I got elected to D.C., like I'm here. But for guys like myself, veterans especially, going to D.C. is more akin to a, clean up on aisle 6 job, right? You should, and I think that's what the founders intended also. That's why they didn't actually go with term limits for congressmen or senators. They figured you left your home, you went to D.C., you spent yourself on the floor, trying to make deals, trying to get things done, trying to fight the fights you were supposed to fight as enumerated in the Constitution, keeping the Union together, keeping it territorially sovereign, fighting foreign enemies, those kinds of things, keeping the states off each other's, from fighting each other. And then you went home. I can't imagine wanting to do this past 8 years. I was 8 years in the Marine Corps. I was exhausted at the end of it, So I think that's kind of the ethos. And I think as this, maybe that fourth turning or this civilizational cycle comes back around and you see this warrior class kind of emerge, and I'm not talking military veterans, I'm talking about maybe just men and women that stand up in their communities and organize. And it doesn't have to be on a military front. It says, hey, we're going to build something here of our own in our community, and maybe not let the feds touch it. I'm going to try and use the law in a peaceful manner to make this happen, but that doesn't mean I forget the rifle, and that doesn't mean I forget my military background. And those military lessons, I think, are going to come to the fore again.
Well, I want to key people in on something, and I brought this up because you're talking about community and things like this. So, for people who don't know, again, the Libertarian Party had their big national convention. They had their election for all the seats, and the Mises Caucus went through and just wiped the floor with all the lefties, the closet lefties and stuff, types like Nick Sarwark and the like. They got motioned out because people were tired of the messaging. They didn't want to be called that they were bigots. They didn't want to be called transphobic, homophobic, fascist, racist, all these things. They got shown the door. Now, if you're unaware of this, for people who are listening in any local area, if you get together, like, you can donate $5 a month to the Mises Caucus, okay? If you do so, if you join up with the Mises Caucus, and let's say you just run for city alderman, which I'm probably going to do next year. I'm just letting everybody know here in Owensville, I'm probably going to be running for city alderman. But if you do, okay, and you are kind of teamed up with the Mises Caucus, if you want to make your city a Second Amendment sanctuary city, they have the resources. They have people who will work with you. They will actually look at your state laws and everything. They will craft the legislation for you, and you could hand it to the city attorney and say, hey, I'd like to introduce this. Let's talk about it. So it's not just Second Amendment stuff. It could be taxation. It could be licensure, regulations, all these things. They have people who know their stuff, and they, in each state, and they will help you craft. So if you're ever thinking about running for office and you want freedom and liberty to be in the forefront, I would suggest to you, you get in contact with the Mises Caucus and talk to these people, because there's a very good chance there's somebody there that can help you and guide you through if you're trying to make freedom and liberty the forefront message in your community, no matter how big or small. They got plans. Those people, there's a reason why Ron Paul called them the libertarian wing of the Libertarian Party. The best and the brightest seem to be in the Mises Caucus. Now, I'm sure there's some others that are not in there that were big and bright. But the LP got taken over by a lot of loonies, and then they got shown the door, and I think their minds were just blown by the fact that they lost every election that had to do with someone who was endorsed by the Mises Caucus. So just spitting it out, just putting it out there, if anybody's going to run for a local office, contact the Mises Institute, or the Mises Caucus, the Mises Institute. I mean, they actually have like a Mises Institute. These young kids get to go and study during the summer and learn from Rothbard and Mises and, Lysander Spooner, all these people. They get to learn Austrian economics and all these things. Some of the big people in the libertarian movement went to the Mises Institute. So it's just something to keep in mind.
If you're going to do economics, go Austrian.
Yes.
Yeah. Always go Austrian.
Austrians know economics.
Yeah.
Let's see if anybody else. So let me ask you this.
Bring it.
They're talking about hemp. What are your thoughts? Because here in Missouri, you can grow it if you buy, I think it's a $750 license, and you have to be a corporate farm. Do you think we should just say, what's the big deal? Can we just grow hemp? Like anybody can grow hemp if they want. I mean, because you literally have to smoke a joint the size of a telephone pole for hemp to get high. And not many people are going to do that. Not many people are going to, because it's kind of obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, where are you going to get rolling papers that big, A? And B, everybody and their brother's like, that dude's smoking hemp, and he's trying to get high. And he's going to die from smoke inhalation. So stop. Here's an actual joint. Just calm down, have some dip. So what are your thoughts on hemp and hemp production?
Okay, so first, and I always try and remind myself of this because these issues are important. One, you don't want me as a federal candidate to deal with this. All right. Unless, of course, the federal government's got does it have some regulation on hemp? I haven't studied this a lot. But
hemp is, it's states, some states have authorized it. They're treating it. Hemp got tied in with marijuana, basically.
Right.
They're kind of combined, and hemp's still a bad word.
Okay.
To me, and it doesn't matter if we're talking Missouri or we're talking Montana, whatever state where you have a lot of farmers. We have a lot of politicians. We have them in this state, and I've said this over and over again. They really back the farmers, but they also back personal property taxes, which is asinine. If we want to help family farms, why not give them another crop that doesn't take near the resources to grow? It doesn't suck near the nutrients out of the ground. Right. Very easy. And to me, it's a no-brainer. But the cotton industry, years and years ago,
there you go,
helped prohibit not only hemp but marijuana,
right.
Tied it all together because the cotton industry felt threatened. Well, sorry, cotton industry, but hemp just holds up better. That's why the founders used it to make rope and all these clothes, concrete. The uses go on. Come on.
Well, I mean, listen where we are right now. This ethos, right, is the founding fathers probably would have been like, where does some person get off thinking that they have any right to tell another person what they can grow in their garden, right? We have come so far beyond any reasonable measure of not just constitutionality, are not just legal domain. We've come so far now just past human decency, right? And you see this in our sick cultural malaise going on right now. And on one side, you have this authoritarian Marxism, right? And at the other side, you've got this, God bless them because I stand with them, these people that are like, just leave me alone. And I think because that was basically me coming home last year at the end of the year. And it was like, I just want to go home. I've done my service and I want to go home. I want to get married and I'd like to have kids someday, and I just like to put some horses back on the farm. But people these days are just trapped. Okay, let me put some money in the bank. Oh, no, you're not going to get any interest rate on that. You're going to be losing 20% out of the currency's value from the invisible hand of inflation, which is a tax. Okay, well, let me invest it. Okay, well, you can invest it, but we all seeing where that's going right now. Let's pretend for a second that our investment industry, and this is something I've studied for years, and it used to be built on fundamentals, PE ratios, how a company's doing. Now it's based on memes, all right? The investment industry is a trap. The 401ks are a trap. Retirement plans are a trap. I mean, you might be able to eke out something somewhere, but now big data has turned the investment industry into a casino. They'll front run your orders. They know what you're going to order. And now it's not about, is this company actually making something useful? It's, okay, how many people are saying it's going to make something useful? Let's front run them. Then we'll run it back down to here and pick up these people with the puts. It's a casino. And like a casino, the house always wins. All right, well, okay, so no investments. Let's get married. Let's have kids. All right, well, schools. I mean, what a disaster. Getting married and having kids, I hate to say it, but the relationship, kind of the dating scene these days is, it's wild. Let's just say that. And now, because of all this convoluted legalese, overgrowth, all right, has infected our culture and infected the ethos of our culture. There is no sovereignty left to a family anymore. We actually commodify in this country marital strife. We found a way to make an industry out of marital strife. Hey, you guys, you having problems? Oh, don't try and work it out, right? Come to law firm X and we can get you X, Y, and Z, and guess what? It's incentivized people to keep fighting each other. I mean, it is, but you can see these are all stemming from this overgrown federal government ethos, right? That big daddy government is going to, guess what? You've got rights. We'll take the responsibilities. Don't worry about it. Hey, you go have fun, But guess what? Then all of a sudden, if you don't take responsibility, it's not really your right. It's your right only as long as the big daddy government says you can have it. And this is what they're trying to do. This is what they're trying to do with gun control. This is what they're trying to do with economics. This is what they're trying to do with family law. This is what they get you addicted to, they get you dependent on it. And anymore, I tell people all the time about the SBA, and mostly it's because the incumbent is, Blaine Luchtenmeyer is the head of the chairman of the small business subcommittee. But anymore, we don't make slaves with chains or shackles. The way we make slaves is with a check, right? And that's what I think COVID, the big lesson a lot of people have taken out of the COVID debacle is they came around and instead of strapping down like maybe World War II or all these other national emergencies that we had, instead of us buckling down and taking care of ourselves, they said, no, we'll take care of you. And you're seeing now the disastrous effects from that. And that's what I think, if we get enough people to wake up to this, and if enough people resonate with this message, that's where somebody like an insurgent candidate like myself can really just step through this wide open door our current political class has opened up.
Okay, so somebody's. Let me. I'm gonna. Well, we got two questions here right in a row.
All right.
I'll hit the first one. It says, actually, I'll go with Warrior Class 3. I've done a lot of Patrick's questions.
Nice.
Should government be involved in marriage, like issuing a marriage license?
Certainly not the federal government. I'm sort of a proponent of, yeah, it's not working. I mean,
No.
so get out of the business. I'd be for that. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to tackle that as a federal candidate. How does Michael Phelps win so many gold medals? He stays in his lane.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And,
It's not the government going here.
Yeah.
We're going to teach you to swim and swim well.
And here's the thing is you can see that legal industry is so pernicious in every state that no state wants to be the one that goes, you know what, we're going to get out of this business. But imagine if one state, and this is the way the founders looked at the states, the individual states, was they were supposed to be the laboratories of democracy, right? They weren't supposed to be under the control of a puppet master federal government. The individual states were supposed to try different things out. So imagine one state, hey, let's make it Missouri, just said, you know what, we're out of the marriage business anymore. You guys want to be married, you want this or X or Y or Z, but look at how the legal class has put that classification into everything. Now look at even at the other way. Now we're deconstructing gender. So who knows what marriage is anymore? I mean, we're in this like wash machine of confusion at this point. So if Missouri said, "Hey, we're out of the marriage game," or we're shutting down our family courts or something like that, I mean, imagine people. It might be one of the better things to happen to actually families in this state, and that has probably so many far on. Consequences down the line, I dare not take it on. But and obviously, as a federal candidate, I'm not involved with that. But I mean, we have at this point we've destroyed family sovereignty, we've destroyed individual sovereignty, and either it's going to fall over or you're going to start electing people to actually take this on in some smart ways. And I'd like to be that person.
So, like how you. I have a question. Or somebody else had a question I didn't bring up earlier because we were talking about the Department of Education,
right,
and lack thereof education. CRT, it's big, big, big. What are your thoughts on the Department of Education and CRT?
Well, so I think CRT is evil, by the way.
I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty easy one right there. But the Department of Education, this is why you got to send somebody in to break these toys, right? And, Department of Education, Small Business Administration, I mean, any one of these number of agencies overgrown that are just covers for, fleecing you at this point, right? CRT only gets injected into your kids' brains through the Department of Education. So the Department of Education, patently unconstitutional. Nowhere in the Constitution is the word education even written. If it wasn't there, then they wouldn't have a vector to stab it into your educational background. And guess what? If California decided, yeah, we want to teach our kids that America's evil and its original sin was slavery, and because you're part of the European class or just all these nasty things that divide, then California teaches it. And then because the states are these individual laboratories of democracy, people leave California.
Which they're already doing.
Right. And they come to Missouri where, yeah, we don't allow that. And I know it's a big button subject right now in the Missouri state legislature. And that's why I feel so, for our state and local people is we are being pumped these diseased ideologies through a federal leviathan that has a vested interest in keeping us distracted, keeping us fighting each other. There's a piece I wrote on dustinhill.org. It's called "It's Not the Illegal Immigrants, Sir." And I want everyone, please read it, because it was a response to Mr. Billy Long's, the congressman out of the 7th, Southwest Missouri. He's running for Senate right now for Roy Blunt's old seat. He wrote an op-ed that was in the Washington Examiner called "It's the Illegal Immigrant Stupid." And it was about illegal immigration, but it was also kind of asking for an endorsement from Donald Trump. And, my response to this was like, as a man who's seen refugees all over the world, Syria, Kurdistan, I mean, just the UN, tent centers. I mean, just miles and miles of refugees that have been there for like a decade now, right? They want you focused on these convoys of people coming across, right? They want you focused on the refugees. They want you to hate them. They want you to, but it doesn't do us any good to hate those people. If we were those people, we would be doing everything in our power to get here, all right? What this serves is, one, it's new suckers to the American Ponzi scheme called the U.S. dollar, where you or I might see a caravan of criminals or charity cases. Either way, the commanding heights of our economy see cash. Okay? Each of those people coming across those borders are now not going to be using the peso. They're not going to be using the dinar or the lira or any other currency around there. They're going to be using the dollar. All right? And now, given our current economic system, we don't even need to tax people. We haven't had a tax raise in a long time, right? Now all we do is everyone in the world using the dollar is having that dollar's value extracted out as the government prints more dollars to fund itself, and then as those dollars hit the general population, everyone's spending power is diluted, right? To the tune of now, they're trying to tell you it's 8.6%. That number's BS. I'm sorry. It just is. It's more like 15. If you use the export price index, it's around 16. But guess what? Gas is way over that. I mean, just basic meats are way over that. It's mind-boggling how much they can extract. And this is the big thing. This is where I can give back to Missouri, and I can give back to America, is because you guys have privileged me with the education that I've had. I can kind of cut through that noise and say, listen, inflation is a tax. The government is borrowing money into existence to pay for itself. It's using that money and you're paying it back, right? It's either going into debt or the 20% coming out of your currency. Inflation, everything is more expensive right now, and that more expensiveness is a tax on you. Because right now you see the administration, their messaging, you hear it. Oh, blame the grocery store. Blame the gas companies. That's a great one. As if they don't want to pump more gas, especially when the prices are so elevated, right? But this is and guess what? We're paying for the messaging even. Like, we're paying into our own demise here. We're paying into our own mental prison. I mean, it's almost, you call it genius in its insidiousness. It really is remarkable. But like I say, as it twists up, you're going to see people emerge. You're going to see leaders emerge. And eventually, we're going to get some people in there that can take this on. I just hope we don't have to wait that long. Like, the open Republican primary, John, is August 2nd, just so you know.
Oh,
August 2nd.
I know, because that's it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, but politically, which I'm kind of right in the middle. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not really a libertarian. I'm just a guy that thinks and goes.
A guy with a brain?
Yeah, goes through topics and goes, oh, that sounds
What party
weird.
is that?
It's the everything government touches turns to crap party. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And again, I just heard a clip the other day. I think it was from the Department of Energy secretary or something. She's like, it's not that we don't want them to make a profit. They should be pumping. They should be building refineries, building rigs, and all this stuff. So to relieve us right now, and it's Good Morning Liberty. If you never listen to Good Morning Liberty, it's a great podcast. But anyway, the guy's saying, so whoever was interviewing her said, why would they do that when you've told them by 2035 you want to get rid of fossil fuels? Why would they take billions of dollars and sink it into saving your hind end when you're going to just dump them like yesterday's garbage? You're going to throw them out. Why would they take the time and the resources, all that capital, invested into something that you're literally going to make basically, in essence, illegal, because you're saying, well, we're getting rid of fossil. listen. The logic and well, I shouldn't say logic. The failure of logic in this whole thing, the stupidity of this whole thing. Hey, let's build a bunch. Let's go move to electric cars on power grids that can't even support non-EV usage. And somebody at work said, "Well, why are they doing this?" I said, "Okay, now you might call me a conspiracy theorist, and that's fine. Here's my thought process on this whole thing. If states like California can't even support the grid they have now without rolling blackouts, especially in the heat of summer. All these things, okay, you can't support it, but you're still pushing towards it. You want everybody to have an EV on power grids that can't maintain the charging of electric vehicles, which means people can't get to work. People can't commute. They can't go on vacation. They can't travel. I said, to me, it looks like the government is trying to tell you how much you can be on their roads, how far you can commute to work. In essence, the government is controlling the means of travel, either interstate or intrastate. Not the government's power, none of their freaking business, but that is the direction, in my opinion, that's the direction we're heading. Because no one with more than 2 brain cells to rub together can go, this makes total sense. We're really helping the environment. Okay, let's look. You see pictures of the Keystone Pipeway, all nice and lush and green. Then you see these huge pits in the ground where they dig out the minerals to make the lithium batteries.
Right, yeah.
Any environmentalist who isn't living in a parallel universe goes, hey, well, what's with the big freaking hole in the ground? And this one's all lush and green, and that one looks like you just dropped a what they call a bunker buster bomb in there.
Right, yeah.
How is that? But again, climate. There are so many. Okay, so climate change, COVID, and what's another one? So climate change, COVID, and there's one other. Those 3 topics have turned so many people into dictators. And I'm not talking about just about government officials. I'm talking about people that live in your town. Some of them have turned into mini dictators because you're not wearing a mask. I heard a guy on a podcast say yesterday, one of his relatives is a doctor. Okay? He never got the vaccine. Now, COVID's pretty much on a downhill slope. I think the vaccine was stupid. That's my opinion. She still will not give him a hug at a family function. Now, you're a doctor. You're supposed to be way smarter than me on medical things. And it seems like at some turns, you've bought into, you are now a cash cow for pharmaceutical companies. And it's the same. It's COVID and this Roe v. Wade. Any government big enough to give you what you want is also big enough to take it away. And I've been telling these people who are out there, I can't believe they overturned Roe v. Wade, and they're going off, and I'm like, listen, you wanted government in medical choices. Yep. And now guess what? They turned against you on one of these. You got exactly what you voted for. You got exactly what you asked for. We've told you if you get government involved, it's going to turn sour. And what did you do? You went la, 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 la. Your Honor, Exhibit A.
Yeah. Well, we call it the tyranny of the weak. And you saw it during especially the COVID times where, guess what? I'm staying home from work right now, but I'm not just being lazy. I'm helping.
Yeah.
I'm the good person. Right?
It's funny.
How dare you go out and work right now? How dare you think that your business is essential?
Mine was. We were told by my employer that we were essential.
Right. Yeah. I mean, whose business to them is not essential? I mean,
right.
Yeah. So it's called the tyranny of the weak, and it's a well-defined phenomenon where all of a sudden, and I always take it back to the economic side, because once the government was able to subvert our social contract, and we can talk about law enforcement social contracts or the social contracts within the Constitution or whatnot, all day. But there's a social contract in your wallet right now that forms 1/2 of every transaction you do, right? And that's the U.S. dollar. Once the government could subvert that social contract, it starts eroding the value out of almost everything else. It starts eroding the value out of hard work. It starts eroding the value out of education. It starts eroding the value out of just basic human interactions, right? I'm writing a piece right now at dustinhill.org. It should be up in the next week or so, called Green New Zombies, right? Because the Green New Deal and this climate change phenomenon, and I'll tell you, everybody right now, and you guys can argue with me if you want, I do believe man is causing some climate change. We are dumping millions upon millions of barrels of oil, of hydrocarbons into the atmosphere a day. I'm not saying that it's causing it to the extent where, dear God, everybody panic, everyone blow up your cars right now. No, that's not correct. And what I really hate about this whole climate change phenomenon, this climate Marxism, is, yeah, maybe if you guys hadn't spent us $30 trillion into debt, maybe if you guys hadn't sucked 95% of our currency's value out, maybe if people were actually able to build something, people don't want to ruin the environment. I think we'd probably all be driving electric vehicles now if we could. I'd have one if I could, right? It's not something where I think, dumping that much hydrocarbons in the atmosphere probably does something. It probably does. Now, what's the solution? It's not this climate Marxism where, and I call it Green New Zombies because this Green New Deal is kind of the premise of a bad zombie movie, right? So a bad zombie movie, or good zombie movie anyway, right? It's, oh, John, oh, you're such a great friend, but I'm sorry. You've been turned. You've been turned into a mindless, yeah. So this is for not bringing back that drill the other day, right? Like, you feel good about it. Like, oh, I had to kill my friends and neighbors, but, I was doing them a favor, right? This is what lets this elite class kind of this mental gymnastics where I'm going to fly my private jet to Davos, right? But all these peasants out here, all these eaters, right? They need to give up their, truck that they might use for, actual work. All these people, oh man, they're bringing in their grain again for the harvest. Geez, if we could just get rid of some of these. It's a bad zombie movie. And yeah, I mean, how we get past that is, I mean, it doesn't seem like most people are getting through it anyway with any sort of intelligent discourse. How we probably get through this is people are just going to have to, like, we're going to have to start crushing down this centralized power, right? Missouri, before I think this last gas tax took effect, I always bragged about Missouri had some of the lowest gas prices in the nation. I was always pumped, like, wow, under $2. Yeah, I could already see your face. You're okay. I'm taking you down a dark hole here. But, I mean, these are kind of these things that I wonder whether we can make a difference. Because to me, because all my experience is federal, and I've seen the federal government's largesse, and that's where I see the problem, because the state and local governments can't print money, right? So they're kind of trying to just pick up the pieces, right? They're trying to hold their budgets together. Half of Missouri's $47 billion budget comes from the federal government, obviously comes with strings attached. To me, the problems stem from the top, and the problems stem from the top because there is a top. There wasn't supposed to be a massive pyramid at the height of our legal and cultural structure. We weren't supposed to have national banks that were too big to fail, right? We weren't supposed to have a Supreme Court that could jump into everybody's bedroom, right? We weren't supposed to have legislators on the bench that could literally make make a cake, right, that they didn't agree with. I mean, we've gone so far beyond the pale at this point, John, that I think people, and this is the door that I'm trying to walk through on the open Republican primary, August 2nd, by the way. This is the giant door that people in our political class currently have left wide open for somebody like me, and there'll be more. There will be more coming, more insurgents like this, Sadly, just to digress for a second, they seem to be coming from the Democratic side. That's where you see a lot of the insurgents, right? AOC, what was she? If not, I mean, she knocked out some guy that had been there for like 30 years or something, right? And here's the crazy part. When she first got in, right, she scared the establishment. They were like, holy crap, this woman is
Out of her mind.
Right, out of her mind, but is saying something at least, yeah, it didn't make a lot of sense, but she was going against the grain, right? And look at like the last 4 years, look at how they've just turned her into the machine now, right? She's just a part of the machine. She's just, like whether you believe in the kind of crazy leftoid stuff she was spouting about, Medicare for all or all this other stuff, at least she had the cojones to say it, right? And she was scaring people. We have to, as a Republican Party, as the right, we have to let a dynamic generation of new leaders come up. But we're trying to, but we're hitting these entrenched people, and it's almost like the right is working even harder to keep this new generation from coming up than the left. And you can see this in the age differences between, especially at the federal level, between the Republicans and the Democrats.
Now, I will say this. You talk about a lot of younger people. COVID is one. I don't know how many reps that I've talked to, either interviewed or just heard about. The subject that got them to run for state office or city alderman, whatever, COVID. COVID is the subject that keeps coming up. Now, as much as I hated lockdowns, shutdowns, vaccine mandates, please wear your mask, all the stupidity that went with it, there is a silver lining. Actually, there's two silver linings. The amount of people said, my kid's never going into public school again,
right,
and the people that said, I'm running for office because this kind of stupid can never happen again. I cannot allow businesses to be shut down at the whim of someone who was unelected. An unelected person in a health department, appointed, not elected, is telling people who's essential, who's not essential, what percentage can you be open, what capacity can you operate in. You can only do drive-through service and carry-out, but no dine-in. All these things, people are like, and a lot of these people didn't
went
even
along with it.
Well, and a lot of these people that are now running, they weren't even business owners.
Right.
But they saw what happened to their friends and family that owned business and went, no. Now, that is the other part. This is what bothers me. It doesn't matter if it's Missouri. You expect it in California, New York, Illinois, because, they might as well all have statues of Stalin erected in their city squares.
Paid for by you.
Paid for by us. The thing that gets me is, and I don't know, during this whole thing, the last 2 years I've been just ragging on this, saying, all you have to do literally is say no. Literally, there's not enough police department, there's not enough police officers and health department officials. I don't care if it's Owensville, St. Louis, whatever. There are not enough of them to arrest you all and shut you all down. If everybody, and this is the thing, I love free market when we actually have free market capitalism,
right,
which we don't, but in a truly free market capitalist society, the consumer makes the decision if you win or lose, if you fail or succeed. Competition breeds a good, healthy, economy and environment. We had a business here in town that said, I don't give a crap what they say, I'm staying open. We had a bar in an adjoining town, same county. They threw a fit and called the health department and turned them in. And I thought, why didn't you just say screw it too? Why didn't, instead of take the competitive part out of it for right now. Why don't you all join forces? You all know this is nonsense. No business owner no smart business owner, no moral business owner is going to willingly make his customers sick. They're going to take precautions to try to keep people healthy. Okay, that's just good business sense. But Jesus, they just buckled, and I'm like, and this is why licensure and all these things bother me, because out of fear that because they have this magic permission slip from government, that if they don't do what they're told, which we saw, they took the magic slip and took it away and said, you're not going by our rules. Our guidelines. Guidelines aren't laws. That's the other thing.
right,
It's like guidelines are just guidelines. They're saying maybe you should do this. Why don't you look at this and maybe you see if it's appropriate for you? They were coming out with guidelines, and everybody took them as gospel and took them as law. And it's like, do you not? So this is the problem with, to me, this is the biggest issue in freedom and liberty. How many years have we had school districts who don't teach civics classes anymore, or if they do, they're poorly taught, that we're taught that your rights come from government? And now our job not only is to find people who will represent us in the proper way and know the actual role of government, but it's getting people to recognize what the role of government actually is. What is government supposed to be allowed to do and not allowed to do? How much extortion money should you pay to the professional mafia members in D.C. or your state government before you go, hey, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, you've gone a little too far here. Maybe you need to back off, So a lot of it is not just freedom is an issue, and it's not an issue. It's freedom is the answer. What's the question? Or the motto that I like is, there are those who just want to be left alone, and there are those who just won't leave them alone.
Right.
Which one are you? That's a motto that I tell people they should live by. You should live by that motto. Do you want to be left alone, or do you want to be one of those people who just can't bear the thought that someone's making their own decisions that you might not like, and you want to get a mayor, a city alderman, a governor, or U.S. Congress or the president involved in? But education is our biggest key. Yes, we need to find people in the especially local and state who understand what freedom is. But I think our biggest problem is educating the masses and getting them to understand what government's role is. But again, COVID, for a lot of people who they call,
off.
that silent majority became a little louder.
Yeah.
Now, if you're on the left, you say, well, these people just want to kill their grandmas. Anybody that's, again, has more than 2 brain cells to rub together go, no, but my grandma should not see her great-grandkids through a pane of glass. I bet grandma wants to hug the grandkids. So if grandma wants to hug the grandkids, I'm going to let her do it. That's it. That's because that's humane. We have just fallen short on what it is, regardless if we agree with someone or not, how to treat someone in a humane fashion. It is appalling.
Yeah. And
sorry I went on a long rant there.
No, please. And I mean, to back you up on that, the mask thing was a genius maneuver as far as a propaganda tool. Because if anyone studies anything about like marketing campaigns, especially in like the political pop propaganda realm, the mask was genius, because at any time you could look around wherever you were. I literally left DC in June 2020. A few days after that, there were some riots going on. That church that burned down, that Donald Trump got a picture of. And through everything in the U-Haul, I was like, I'm done with this town. I've done my contract. It's been good. I'm going back overseas. And it's like Escape from New York or Escape from DC, basically, right? There was smoke in the back, and I'm in a U-Haul driving away from town. I'm like, I'm going back to the farm. The mask was genius in that when I got home to Missouri, to Middletown, I think I went to my hometown bar that night, the one that I tried to buy later. Thanks a lot, Brian. You walked in there, nobody's wearing a mask. If you would have been wearing a mask in there, they would have said, get out right now. But in DC, little old lady gets in the elevator with you and you're not wearing a mask and just looks at you like that you are the devil. Like, where's your mask? I'm like, lady, you got on the elevator with me. You saw I wasn't wearing a mask. Why'd you get on? The mask was genius in that it let the government instantaneously see who was taking the messaging, who was taking it. And it didn't really get to tell you, okay, who thought it was serious or not, right? But on any one of these 100 million cameras throughout the country, right? You could take an instant snapshot on a city street and see how your messaging was working, right? Okay, in an airport, right? Obviously, people, whether they like it or don't like it, they're wearing it. So, okay, we've got a lot more pickup here. In Middletown, Missouri, probably more like Owensville or, Gasconade counties, Marys, wherever like that. Probably not a lot of people picking up on the mask thing. Our messaging's not getting through. These people might have brains. But, city streets in D.C., maybe St. Louis, Minneapolis, you could take a snapshot of a street and say, okay, we've got, not only are they taking the messaging, they're like drinking it deep. Like they're wearing the mask alone in their car, driving down the street, right? So, and I'd love to see the data on that. I'm sure it's fascinating just from an economist standpoint. Just compared against like density. I'm econ nerding out on you right now. I'm sorry, Mr. Williams. But we're almost being run through the world's worst social experiment. And I hear that from people in the district all the time. People in the district all the time are saying we are in some sort of simulation. We have to be. And I'm like, yeah. So break it a little bit. Don't vote for who you're supposed to vote for. I mean, what was Donald Trump, whether you like him or hate him or whatever like that? Donald Trump was a middle finger from middle America saying, no, we're not just going to vote who you tell us the polls are saying we're going to vote for. We're not just going to, do what you tell us, right? I mean, Donald Trump was a stick of dynamite being rolled down the halls of D.C. by the flyover states like Missouri, right? And you can see the reaction. You could see the reaction. And whether you go into the election fraud or not, you can see that the parasite of D.C. developed some antibodies and they developed some tactics to protect themselves, because that's what bureaucracies, when they become bureaucracies, that's their first priority, is to protect themselves, right? They don't want to shut themselves down. They don't want to shut down agency X, Y through Z, They want to keep this thing going, but sadly, what they're doing is as government grows and grows and grows and ever grows, it's sucking the lifeblood out of the body politic. It's sucking the lifeblood out of the thing that's sustaining it. So, and this is what you can see, and this is what Sir John Glubb talks about at the Fate of Empires, right? Is you can see the only way to keep the facade going is to expand, right? So this is why we have all these engagement zones overseas. This is why they're trying to come up with more and crazier disinformation governance boards or these new programs. Oh, OSHA can now make regulations concerning this. All these different bureaucracies are not just fighting us, they're fighting each other for money, right? Money used to be real. Money used to be real, and I'm sure some of your listeners remember when it was. And, I always talk about, because I'm a big fan of precious metals and also crypto. There's people talk about Bitcoin a lot with me, and I love talking about Bitcoin. And the best thing about Bitcoin to me is, of course, the free market and human ingenuity, which backs it, is going to come up with something. Like, we're not just going to sit here and be like, yeah, I guess we'll just lose 20% a year. Like, oh, good. Of course, somebody's going to come up with something like, hey, let's get all these intermediaries out of here because they're just sucking us dry. Same thing with gold and silver. Of course, people are going to start looking for anything to get their money. I mean, cash is trash at this point. I hate to say that, and now look, okay, remember we're talking about the maze we're running through. We're trapped here. All right, well, I'll take my money and I'll put it into real estate, right? Now what's going on with real estate? Now, interest rates are going up. House prices are going to crash. It's, we are in a state, but I think, especially this year, that kind of state is going to get people to the polls, and I hope it really does, because we got big problems and we need big solutions.
Yeah, that's putting it like that. And
yeah,
you're an econ nerd, and I was just telling. This is funny you brought this up because I was talking to my wife on the way home.
Warrior nerd.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, I want to get your label right. I don't want to misgender you or anything. So I was talking to my wife, and I said, okay, so I work at my place of employment is union. It has a union, okay? And there was a little ruckus at a meeting Wednesday, and I'm not going to get into it. But there was, and I told my wife, I said, I missed it. I forgot about the meeting. I had all intentions of going, and I missed out on it. And somebody was unhappy, and started a little fracas there. But anyway, I told her, I said, this is my problem. Yes, I wanted to. I like to get a firsthand account. Okay, that's the first thing. But I am such a nerd of human nature. I love to see. So I have this bad habit, and I don't do it intentionally. If I interact with someone every day, and especially if I joke around with them a lot, things like that, I unintentionally watch their face as I'm communicating with them. I'm watching their body language and their behavior while they're talking. And the problem for them is if they're trying to josh me and just like they're telling me some little lie to pull one over on me, I sit there and I look them in the eye, but I'm looking at their face, right? And I've noticed when they interact with someone else and they're trying to pull one over on them, I see a certain tendency in the way their mouth moves, or they do something quick, and I'm like, oh. So they look at me and I go, you're full of crap. And they're like, no, I'm being serious. I'm like, you're full of crap. And they're like, all right, I'm full of crap. So I told her, I said, this is my problem. I'm infatuated with, like, if we go to Six Flags, which we haven't been in years, I don't care about the rides. My wife and my kids would get on a ride with my in-laws and stuff, and I would just people watch. I love people walking by. I love seeing. I love to watch people interact. There's something to me that's very fascinating about it.
You're a people watcher.
Yeah, and I can't help it. So last year, Chick-fil-A opened up they finally opened up their lobby. I love going to Chick-fil-A, so they opened up their lobby, and me and my wife went in, and we sat down, and we were just eating after work one day. And actually, I take that back. I went by myself. My wife stayed home, and I said, I don't care if she's not with me or not. I'm going to Chick-fil-A. So I ordered my food. I sat down. I was eating, and I just was watching people. There were teenagers sitting at a table talking. There were couples sitting, or just guy friends sitting there chatting. And I was watching them all. And then just for some reason, I started thinking, like, damn, man, COVID took this simple thing away from people. Just literally going to a restaurant, sitting down and eating, enjoying the food you're eating, enjoying each other's company. So we take it for granted because every day we do it.
Think of what it did to the kids.
Right. The babies, especially, that can't see their grandparents' face. They have no idea how to read emotion. So there have been these people that do like therapy for kids, that are learning disabled or whatever. Right. They're seeing a huge influx in kids coming in because you screwed with their brain, their development by not letting them have normal human interaction. But I just sat and thought, God, we took all of this for granted. This simple pleasure of being free enough to go choose what restaurant you want to sit down at, eat your food, have conversation with people that you love, and then you go about your separate ways, and then maybe do it the next week. That simple little thing, which involves freedom, because you go into certain places, you can't just do that. Mm-hmm. There's rules against that or whatever. That simple little thing was gone, depending on what town you were in, 6 months or a year. I'm thinking, what the hell did these people do? Were they the ones that locked themselves in their house scared to death, or did they say, they see please wear a mask, and they just walked in and said, I'm not wearing a stupid mask, take it and stick it where the sun doesn't shine, and go on to be an example. So then I wondered, what kind of people were they? Were they strong in nature and said, I'm not, if I must wear a mask and you won't let me in here without one, then I won't shop here anymore. What kind of people were they? Did they give in? Did they fight against it?
Sure.
Just looking at simple interactions of people made me go on like a 15, 20-minute mind trip down. How the hell did we get here? And this simple little interactions, a lot of people voluntarily, businesses and their customers gave up voluntarily.
Yeah.
And it's something that almost everyone, unless you're just an a completely antisocial, where you're like, people, then never liked them and never heard of them. It's something that everybody enjoys doing. That simple life pleasure, just because of tyrants and wannabe dictators, they said, human interaction, that's for sissies. Wow. We're going to take that away from you. See how you like that. And you saw very few people get very loud and vocal, and a lot of people sat in the background and go, I'll do anything to get back to normal. There isn't going to be another normal because you've allowed this for too long. That's your normal now.
Well, so look at it, though, because it's not in a vacuum, right? So look at this kind of as almost an immune response, right? I mean, look at how desperate our government is getting these days. Look at how, because the mask is off, pun intended.
Literally.
Yeah, right? They shot their shot with the COVID. I guess we might have monkeypox coming up or whatever variant.
Wait,
right?
hold on. I literally, on Dumb Bleep of the Week episode on Good Morning Liberty,
Monkeypox.
Someone said they have to find a new name for monkeypox.
They got to come up with a new name.
Because it's racist. Now, who thinks that but racist people?
Right.
I don't go around going, oh, yeah, a monkeypox that relates directly to African Americans. These idiots out there said, we got to change the name. And then he jokingly said, yeah, and they're also going to have to change the name of the country, Niger, because people in Alabama mispronounce it all the time. So it's... I'm sorry. I had to inject that.
Yeah, but look at it. So all this messaging, you can, because like I said, I'm an optimist, right? Is you can kind of see these signs as a sign of a desperate bureaucracy, right? They know everything kind of flows, because I'm always going to go back to economics, right? Everything flows from there, and they're trapped, all right? You can't raise rates that much because we're $30 trillion in debt. Okay, well, we'll blow out the currency then. Okay, well, guess what? You're going to crash the economy. And guess what? That's when uprisings happen, right? We've got a Putin's price hike. Try the Putin price hike message. Okay, try the lock down the economy due to the flu thing. They voted. The peasants are uprising. They voted for a game show host named Donald Trump. That's how ticked off they are. Well, just throw anything they can at the wall, right? And in this frantic frenzy,
like death throes almost.
Right, exactly. That's where, like I say to people, leaders will emerge. And I hope somebody's listening to this right now who maybe is just a little bit inspired to go, you know what? He's right. There's an opening here in whatever election or whatever leadership role. It doesn't have to be an election. It could just be a community leader. Like a big part of this campaign isn't just about getting elected. A big part of this campaign is coming back and reintegrating into the community that left so long ago. I've been a visitor in my hometown and my home state for 2 decades now, because every time I came home, it was always, drop your gear, get whatever gear you're going to take out on the next mission out. And now I'm finally home. I'm finally home, and hopefully for good. And so this campaign is about meeting people like you, meeting people at the Patriot Enclave, meeting, Missouri Freedom Initiative, right? It's about this community coming back together. Yeah, times, they suck right now, all right? Inflation, gas prices, people are getting squeezed. But as they get squeezed, people also will reconnect with each other. They'll remember, hey, what did we used to do before, we had all this money flying around everywhere? There is still that human connection. And I think through COVID and through the last 40 years, we've lost a lot of that. We've debased it. And it hasn't really been our fault. It's been kind of the government subverting that social contract that we had. But it's never too late to get it back. It's never too late to get it back. So it's going to be painful. I know that. But, like I said, if anything that's easy probably isn't worth anything, or you're doing it wrong. So And as a guy trying to get an entrenched politician out of office, I'm learning that the hard way right now. So thank you to you, and thank you for bringing me on, man. This has been a lot. And yeah, thanks
like
to
I said,
Missouri Freedom Initiative.
Thanks
for
to
hooking this
Patrick.
up.
Yeah, thanks to Patrick because he's the one that told me about you, and then I was like, oh yeah. I mean, like I've had a couple people on. I've had Mr. Rydell, and then I can't remember, or Angela Romine on before now. And there's this thing. So sometimes, I've been interviewing people that I know or just we just pretty much see eye to eye on everything. And then I met a gentleman at the Capitol in Senator Eigel's office, and he's like, "Oh, you should talk to this guy, and these people are great." I'm like, okay, so I started contacting them, and a couple said, "Yeah, we'll come on." And I get them on, and I listen to them, and I told my wife, I said, "Here's the thing. I know we're going to disagree, and both times, marijuana was the issue.
Oh, really?
Like we could get almost on everything else. Marijuana was the issue where they're like, nope, can't do it." And I'm like, God, we're so close.
You should have smoked some first, so you guys would have agreed on it.
Oh man, I'm telling you, I haven't done it in so long that I would probably sit here in a fetal position. People like,
I haven't done it since I was a teenager, by the way. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So, but anyway,
bring it together.
I told my wife's like, you have to bring people on that you're not necessarily going to agree with,
right,
or because it's too easy. You have to bring them on. Now, again, I am not a political organization, so I'll bring people on that want to be interviewed, and I will let them speak their piece. I will not shout them down. I will not call them names. And then I just tell my listeners, make up your mind. So same with you, Mr. Hill. People agree with you on things, disagree with you on things, and I know a lot of people are adamant saying, we're the leaders, you're the rep, so please do what we're asking you to do instead of saying, well, I'm big. Because I go back to the same example time and time again. Years ago, I did a podcast years ago, and I read an article from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Illinois was going to do something with their seatbelt laws for people in the back. I don't remember what it was. Literally, one of the state reps said, and this is almost verbatim, if we're not telling people how to live their lives, we're not doing our job. That was almost verbatim what he said. and as soon as I read the sentence, I was like, well, there's your problem.
Right.
You think as a state rep, it doesn't matter if you're a state rep, you're U.S. congressman, what it is. Some of these people think they're supposed to tell us how to live. No, bro. Remember, we had to get in our cars and drive to a polling place and check your box to put you where you're at now. Please don't start thinking that now suddenly you are the rulers of us, which a lot of them do.
A lot of them do, yeah.
A lot of them do. So please.
This is a job application. And,
right.
And the thing is, with all these, we talk about that maze and all those complicated issues, about the investment banking and, marriage and all these things, is you're hiring me for a job and you're hiring me to tackle these issues because guess what? You're busy being a police officer or being a farmer or being a teacher or being the things that make the society run. So a lot of people don't have time to look down the voting record of every state rep or a voting record of a congressman, right? And this is, I think, what the founders knew back when they founded the country was as long as we align success in government with success of the people, this thing will work out just fine. But when all of a sudden we break that link because we subvert the dollar, we subvert the currency, we subvert the value of work, right? All of a sudden you break that link, and now doing well in government means doing well for a donor class that now has access to that capital. Now we've severed that link, and guess what? Now this is where you get messaging like that we're getting out of the administration. Now, instead of the success of the country being the success of the political class, now the success of the political class depends on propagandizing. And this is what I say on the website, dustinhill.org, in the my writings is now Congress isn't made of leaders. It's made of managers. And people say to me, well, yeah, they got to manage the government. No. They're not there to manage the government. They're there to manage us. That's what they're there to manage. They're there to keep this circus just turning and keep us distracted and fighting each other. I mean, all these committee members, what is it if not a circus? The last one, the Supreme Court Justice nominee, Ketanji Brown, I believe it was her name, right? You have a Supreme Court Justice nominee literally pledge allegiance publicly, because that's what that was. When she knows what a woman is. Of course she does. The whole point of her getting the fanfare from the left and the mainstream media about her getting nominated was that she was a black woman. But then she gets asked what's a woman, she can't answer.
I'm not a biologist.
So she literally, that to me, I saw that as, I am literally willing to make myself look stupid in public and to declare myself part of this wing, this fracture, this side over here. And that's what that is. This is the circus. This is the noise. And they're hoping that we just focus and clamp onto the noise. And my job in this campaign is to try and seek that signal, right? Get that signal out. Like, while we're concentrating on this stuff, we're all losing. We're all having our prosperity leached. And I'll tell you what, going around the world and seeing the devastating effects of that is horrible. But then coming home to my hometown, which I love very much, and seeing the devastation wrought there, that I will not have. That will make me stand up and say no. And that's why I'm in this race.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for that. We went a little over 2 hours tonight, which I told him sometimes we go 2 hours, and we went 2 hours. We went there. We went 2 hours. So anyway, that's going to do it for this edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. Missouri Liberty Report. Now, if you come back in a little while, I will have the links to Dustin's website in the description, and plus the links to KEYK, MOLibertyRadio.us, and the Missouri Freedom Initiative's websites. I have been lax in doing that the last few weeks. I will get back to that. I will get them put back up in the description section for anybody new who has subscribed to this channel, so you can see all of our friends for freedom and liberty. Go to their sites. Please support them. Do all these things. Now, I know you all know that I do love me some Sabaton. So we're going to leave out today, because I don't think I've ever played this. This before the song starts, you're going to hear a little thing called "Diary of an Unknown Soldier." Now, this is from the Last Stand album, but this has to do with World War I. So this is a diary entry from a soldier in World War I. It's very descriptive, but he basically tells you in a very short amount of time exactly what he viewed as they were lost. This is talking about the Lost Battalion. So it's going to start out with the diary of an Unknown Soldier, and then it goes into the song Lost Battalion. Again, Sabaton is awesome because everything's based in history. They're from Sweden, I think, power metal band. Everything is historical with them. It's amazing. So I hope you guys enjoy this as much as I do. Sometimes I think I play metal and people go, please make it stop. It doesn't matter. It's not going to stop. Metal does not stop here.
Turn it up.
Okay, so here we go. Again, thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back next week. I'm going to be joined again by Robert Smith, who is running for U.S. House of Representatives. So Robert will be back on with us next week, and we'll talk about all things Missouri. But anyway, everyone have a great week. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you next week for another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report.
I remember the Argonne, 1918. The sounds of that battle still haunt me to this day. Machine gun fire from enemy lines. The sickening sound of a bayonet tearing through human flesh. A soldier next to me firing his sidearm in desperation. All these sounds still echo in my mind, and as conducted by Death himself, it all comes together as music. A rhythm of death. A symphony of war.
From their land as they made their stand, they stood strong and the legend still lives on. The Great War rages on. Our battalion is lost in the Argonne. Under fire, there's nothing they can do. There's no way they can get a message through. Suffer heavy losses as the battle carries on. Liberty division standing strong. Surrender or die, and the stakes are high. They live and they die, there's no time for goodbye. Weapon in hand as they made their stand, still disregard in demand. They would never comply, they would rather die. But through the blockade, they were finally saved. Friendly fire, munitions running low. The supplies they were dropped upon their foe. 1918, the war still rages on. The battalions still trapped in the Argonne. Chose not to surrender. They chose victory or defeat. Fallen brothers resting by their feet. From their land as they made their stand, but disregarded demand. In surrender or die, and the stakes are high. They live and they die, there's no time for goodbye. Weapon in hand as they made their stand, still disregarding demand. They would never comply, they would rather die. But through the blockade, they were finally saved. Through the Great War they stood strong, but the memory of the fallen still lives on. From their land as they made their stand, but disregarded demand. In surrender